last 8 years. I didn't want to do death by PowerPoint because, you know, the way that we bring these things to life is I can show you some of the live solutions that we've deployed currently that are going on right now to add a little bit of gravitas to what we're trying to talk about. So, as Glenn said, I'm going to start with the presentation. If you've got any questions, please leave them till the end or when I get to the kind of product demonstration, because I'm going to go into some details about how we do what we do. And then please, you know, feel free to interact and question me on anything that I'm presenting. So, to give you a little bit of a background about EviFile, EviFile stands for Evidence File. That's where the product came from originally. We've been trading since 2018. Our product was bespoke software at that point. And the history of our product was when Carillion collapsed, Balfour took on the electrification of the Great Western, and Network Rail made quite a damning statement around assurance, that they didn't know where assurance was, and they had to progressively assure engineering design data as things were being done. And that's where the product came from. We originally built out the solution for overhead line electrification, construction and modification. And this presentation really is to talk about our, you know, the detail of our journey, about how we've taken what we've done for one specific discipline, for one specific challenge, and taken the way that we've approached that and applied it to all the other process data capture, reporting, you know, behavior and culture challenges that we see across not just the rail industry, because, you know, EviFile is a sector agnostic solution. We work in water and power, utilities, drainage, construction, but by far and away, rail is our biggest sector. The way the kind of history of what we've been doing is, once we built out the products with Balfour on the Great Western, we took what we did and turned it into a SaaS product. Now, I appreciate, you know, I will understand what that means. Software as a service. What it actually means is that the software does the work. It's not bespoke code, right? So what you will often find with bits of software is that each individual client will get a different version of the software. What that creates is it's not scalable, it's not sustainable, and that's where problems arise with software businesses. So we turned our EviFile offering into something that is highly configurable. What that gives us is a little bit of a differentiator to the other digital process and data capture solutions that are in the market at the minute. It enables us to build something that's right for you and for your project. I'm going to get into all the details about how we do that, but just to finish kind of how we got to where we are today. The pandemic made us focus on rail, quite simply. That's where the money went. We were, I think, 4 people at the time when the pandemic hit, so we had a lot of big projects going. So we've made a real pivot into rail, and that's what's enabled us for me to come to you today and talk about the level of solution and challenges that we solve in the rail sector, because we've had that focus. Now, as I've just been talking to Lauren about, we've been highly fortunate that we've been able to work with some very large programs like the Trans-Pennine Route Upgrade, which is contracted with Network Rail, which has enabled us to bring together all these kind of component parts into a program-led delivery, which is what I'm going to talk you through in the presentation. Just to kind of finish off the history of where we are, we're now up to Streamer 23. We have had some investment in July this year, last year now, sorry, in January now. And obviously that investment is for us to kind of turbocharge what we're not only doing in rail, but in light rail as well. And, you know, Sean and I have worked together in his previous life at Volker Rail. And obviously we've now started working with Nexus to look at how we can take what we've done in heavy rail and apply exactly the same principles in light rail, in highways, and utilities and other sectors. And the last point, just to finish off about, you know, I'm sure everyone on the call, everyone in PWI is fully aware of the funding challenges in the rail sector at the minute. CP7 has been painful. CP8 is not expected to be much better by the early indications. So, you know, we are not only taking what we're doing into other sectors, but there is a lot of growth in other areas, particularly in Ireland, as I'm sure you're all aware. The Irish government have an awful lot of money investing in infrastructure. We're also working in Canada. with people like Atkins and Alstom, because obviously there's a lot of work out there as well, and we've deployed projects in the US as well. So a bit of history about the product. So what is it we actually do? I'm preaching to the choir here. I often, make a joke about this, but managing rail projects, managing any project is a complex business. There are different silos, there are different companies interacting, designers, contract asset owners, suppliers, subcontractors, bringing together that smorgasbord, the mess of connecting the dots between how things are delivered and communicated is incredibly challenging. You have different levels of tech maturity across your supply chain. And I'm going to heavily focus in on that as one of the major challenges that we have as a business, trying to digitalize and get rid of paper and Excel reporting from rail delivery and construction projects. Obviously, this complexity and a lot of the manual processing, a lot of manual movement of data leads to a lot of delays, leads to a lot of additional costs, a lot of human error, a lot of handback, people handing back projects 2-3 years, sometimes 8 years, I've heard, after the entry into service. I heard a stat the other day that 90% of all Network Rail projects have still got some element of assurance to hand back, which is astonishing, really. But you think of the history of it, who's got the biggest box of paper? That's why we originally were brought in, is to digitalize what has historically been paper updates and people typing it into Excel to build reporting. So since our kind of humble beginnings 8 years ago, we've been really, like I said, we've been really fortunate that we've, engaged with some of the big players in the market. As I mentioned earlier, Sean and I used to work together at Volcarail on the East Coast PSU. We've been working with Alstom. I've got some great examples to show you what we're doing. But we've covered every discipline. We've probably hit most of the major challenges in rail deployment. Where you've got missing data, why are things delayed, why are things handing back? We have experience of pretty much everything that we've been doing in the last 8 years. And what that's enabled us to do, particularly with TransPennine, is bring it all together under a program. So we're not just doing signalling and telecoms work for Atkins. It's about doing signalling and telecoms, OLE, civils, ITPs, bringing it together, audits, health and safety data. And this level of tier ones and the businesses that we work with, because the TransPennine upgrade is contracted with Network Rail, there is a clause in that contract that enables us to share any digital solution that we've deployed for TransPennine with anybody else that works for Network Rail. The reason that Network Rail insisted on that, and we were obviously quite happy for that clause to be put in, is that they wanted added value. That all that they were thinking about is, if we digitize a process that gives us robust information, why would we redo it again somewhere else? And we see a lot of this. It's people reinventing the wheel all the time, not taking things that work and continuing to evolve them, but constantly looking at the new shiny toy and not what's worked in the past. So what does EBIFile do at its core? Now, it's not a very sexy title, process management and data coordination. It's enough to send anybody to sleep. But ultimately, that's what the SaaS product does. It enables us to work with anybody to control any process. And I mean that not in a kind of salesy way, is that there is no process a client has come to us with that we've not had a go at trying to digitally control it. So understanding not just that there's a challenge. I'll give you a great example. So engineering assurance, right? All we get is a load of quality check sheets, but those quality check sheets have design measures in them, right? So we found out, where does that design information come from? Well, it's usually written in manually by somebody. It's just insane. You've got data somewhere else, you connect something in. So how do you connect design data with your engineering assurance? So these are the kind of things that we start looking at, is turning what is generally a separate process into a coordinated flow of data between processes that gets signed off by the right person, right time. So how does that then work? So understanding what the processes are so that we can control it in the real time. And that can be anything from digital ITPs. And again, I've got a whole suite of stuff that I'm going to show you. The suite of solutions that we've deployed, particularly the ones on TransPennine Network Rail, and everything else we do, we're working with Sean and you guys at Nexus, is that we customize it to suit what you do. So we take the engine that's deployed elsewhere, that works, it's deployed, it's working, it's delivering the job, and it's saving money. And then we can share that with you and then customize it for the way that you work. Because not everybody works the same. I've got some examples to show you two. They're both doing signaling installation handover to test, both achieving exactly the same thing, but the sites look different because they operationally manage them in different ways. That's why we are different, because we customize the way that you deliver to make sure it's optimal for you. Obviously, everything that we do is compliant. It creates an audit trail, evidence file. Everything that's done in the software is tagged. Who's done it, where it's done, who signed it off, what data was it, what evidence was it, what location was it? So that at the end of the project, you have a history of auditable information and data that you can pick up. And obviously, the final piece of that puzzle is bringing it together through Power BI, through visual insights, because having good quality data, everyone has lots of data, but getting insight out of it. So not just producing one standard report that everybody's got to do. We tailor the reports so that CREs get to see the detail they need. Capital delivery directors just to get to see a RAG status because they're not interested in the detail unless something's going wrong. That's what we do. We only give people the information that they need. So how do we bring all this together? Because we have been very much focused around engineering. What is going on track? Now, I'm not going to focus on this too much because this is where we are now beginning to play. And the reason I wanted to show you this is that we are now involved at the early stages of HS2 rail systems work with Colas and BAM and Ferrovial. We're talking with Midlands Rail Hub at the minute about how we start working and engaging with teams at design. So not starting to think about construction assurance 6 weeks before construction's due to start. It's understanding you have a set of requirements that start at the beginning of the projects. And those requirements need to be managed throughout the life cycle, right through to handback and operations and maintenance. Generally, these requirements are put in a spreadsheet. This is what happens, and people have these huge spreadsheets managing billion-pound programs. People are having to manage and report on it through there. So we've started to take a bigger look at what we are trying to support. How do we manage data from requirements? We're not a design tool, but how do we bring design into what we do? How do we connect it in with where the challenges lie? And the challenges lie, and there's no disrespect to anybody on the team, is the challenge is where the control is lost. And that's generally as you are deploying things through the supply chain. As you might see a Power BI dashboard, but beneath that Power BI dashboard, you will have people typing data from paper into Excel. Excel will be imported into another Excel spreadsheet, and then it will be taken into a Power BI dashboard. And that's the facade we are trying to break down, is that everything should be being digitally collected. You shouldn't have holes in your data. And that's what I'm going to focus on today. So what we have been doing over the last 8 years is kind of closing the gaps. So we're not a Bentley or an Autodesk or a Trimble that has, massive models, 4D model planning tools like V6. All the big tier ones have those big systems that have the model data, the asset information. Our mantra as a business is to just plug in with that data, understanding what bits of technology are being used in an ecosystem, and how do we plug the gaps around requirements management and validation and verification. Multidiscipline, digital engineering assurance. This is what I'm going to focus on on the next slides. Real-time progress tracking against plan. So these are the kind of the major 4 areas that we are now focused on: requirements, engineering assurance, and shift reporting. What is happening per shift on the ground? How are people tracking what's being planned, what's being delivered? We also can manage health and safety information. Again, it's something we built for TransPennine because each of the subcontractors in the alliance were collecting their own data in their own systems, and they couldn't bring it together. So we were asked to collect it at the top and then disseminate it back down into the supply chain. So again, we have a suite of solutions to manage health and safety. But this last bit is around, once you've created an ecosystem to deploy shift, to manage your projects, whether you're doing renewals, early assurance, civils, ITPs, your client, whether it be Nexus as a client or Network Rail, depending on what area of Network Rail that you work in, they will ask you to integrate that information data back into a different system. It might be project-wise, it might be EB, it might be Synchro, it might be ASITE, it might be AConnex. There are all these different solutions, and what we're trying to do here is control delivery and then provide that data back into the common data environment. So before we get into the weeds of engineering assurance, this is what we've been working with you guys at Nexus. We had a call today with Sean and the team around how do we consistently plan the lower level planning that's done that manages the shift reporting. What are the guys and girls, what are the quants going in per shift? Not what's been assured from a CRE assurance perspective, but just what has happened. Because as you know, generally these things are people getting WhatsApp at 4 in the morning, getting phone calls, and people cobbling together data. So taking the engine that we've created again with TransPennine, we have about 4 different versions of it now, which enables you to just literally import your plan data. Plan data disseminates into a shift report. The guys on the ground just get a nice tablet with all the stuff that's expected on their shift report, and they just tick it off one by one by one. And if anything needs replanning, all that data is then managed in the shift report and pushed back into the engine. And I'm going to show you an example of that when we get into the product demonstration. The other bit of lower level planning and shift reporting is possessions delivery, something that, again, is incredibly costly if you overrun. And again, we built this it's the original solution that we built for TransPennine, about how we manage possessions. So that hour by hour P6 plan, the milestones, how do you digitally import that and then use it to track it through the length of a possession? And again, we just finished the Alstom Cambridge blockade, which again went really well. We can show you what the completed possession report looks like, because it's being updated in real time because of the importance of handing back at the end of the possession. All the information that you see on the report is updated in real time. As soon as a shift manager reports something on his mobile device, it will update on the dashboard in the control room in around about 20-30 seconds. So making sure that you're picking up and reporting on issues as you go. Now, this is the drink of really where EBIFAL's core proposition is. And this is where we see the most benefit of certain large programs around assurance. How do you digitally and progressively assure work as it's being done and it's being signed off by the relevant CRE and the CEM with all the necessary data and evidence in a single solution? Now, the wheel over here is literally for every discipline, we have created a digital solution that manages the installation of signaling telecoms assets. And we've got, I think, 38 different asset types for Atkinson Alstom. We have OLE construction and modification. We have a bonding solution for Siemens. Now, we didn't just create these as EBIFAL to go, oh, we've got something to sell you. What we've been doing is working with the Siemens, the TransPennines, the Network Rails to understand what is the process you are trying to control. You're getting rid of those paper quality check sheets. Where does that data come from? So this is what we've done, this suite of solutions that we have, including a digital toolkit, which covers everything from surveys, materials management, audits, permits, snags. This is just what we've been doing with our clients. And these solve a lot of problems, enable real-time reporting, and enable people to go back and hand back with assurance at the end of the project. Now, all the assurance that we've been doing through the work in TransPennine, they've very much taken a strategic view. This is what a number of the big programs that we are talking to at the minute are looking at, about how do we bring this together before construction starts. So we're not chasing our tails. We understand what information we're asking our supply chain to collect, what evidence and how they want to sign that off. So the way that we do this is looking at the lowest common denominator. What is the minimum level of assurance that you need to collect from your supply chain to know that's been done right? Yeah, I've got the right, so I've got the evidence, I can set, I'm going to hand that back with a surety. So we connect that level of reporting to the digital IT inspection test plan. So inspection test plans are connected to the quality check sheets. So we have these solutions that manage the lower level detail on the ground, but connecting back into a digital inspection test plan. Obviously, they then provide the evidence for your forms A to G. We're now involved in the health and safety file creation for TransPennine, because obviously all the assurance sits in our solution. So they've started to ask us, how do we bring all this together for official handback, the C forms in an entry into service? So this really is where we are starting to see people looking at this and mapping this out before construction starts. And this is what we can share and then customize to suit new clients. So we're going to be hopefully working with you guys at Nexus when we've got this initial OLE work out. We've got a signaling solution that we can just literally port over and customize to work for Nexus. So I wanted to kind of take a little bit of a pause because Sean was quite keen for me to show what it kind of looks like and feels like, because people can sit talking about PowerPoint presentations until the cows come home. So again, I've got a few live sites that I wanted to show you. Hopefully they're coming up okay on the screen. So ultimately what we are trying to do is, as you can see, is to control the process and the data that enables real-time, robust reporting, right? So that the right people get the right information at the right time. Sorry, it's cheesy, but it's exactly what we do. Yeah. And once we've got that in place, that standard is then deployed again and again and again, and it's tweaked for each of the projects. So what I'm showing you here, as you can see, what I meant by a SaaS offering right at the beginning of the conversation is that you can see that every customer gets the same version of the software. It's just different branded, different configuration of how we control and manage the process. And this is what enables us to be highly scalable. You know, it runs really quickly on mobile devices. But that's what we do. By controlling the process digitally through our web platform, which is what you can see here, we have a mobile application on Apple and Android, as you'd expect, that obviously anybody can log into. You could log into it right now on your phone or your tablet. You won't be able to get into anything, but what the mobile application allows us to do is to simplify what we are asking guys and girls on the ground to collect. So everything I'm going to show you in the product demonstration here is I'm a super user. I can see everything. So it might look quite cluttered, but obviously I'm trying to show you the breadth of what we're trying to achieve. When we deploy these things, when you log in, you only get access to what you want to see. And that's dictated to by the client itself. So I wanted to start with site reporting because that's close to Sean's heart around what we've been doing with Nexus and with Volker and others. But this is the original engine. This is why I wanted to start with TransPennine, because this is, as you can see here, they call it the work request form. And this is version 3. And this is really important because all the solutions that we digitally deploy, unlike a lot of softwares, every file is very flexible. So we actively encourage users to tell us what doesn't work. Now, generally, you'll hear software companies for the hill when you ask them for feedback on how things work. But we are really interested in it because ultimately, if people on the ground finding it clunky, they don't like using it, or they're not feeling that they're being listened to, ultimately they stop using it by hook or by crook. So what we do is, working through governance, is get the feedback from the supply chain, bring the ideas into a central pot, and then work through those to improve the process. And as you can see, this is version 3. So this is again a shift report. Their shift reporting is, the planning is actually done in another tool. But in A-Site, we grab that data, we import it in, it's done automatically. There's no manual input in here. It just grabs it on a daily basis. The data is then imported, they allocate them out to each of, depending on the discipline. And again, it's a live site, so I'm not going to do it because I'll get shot. But you can see here, you can filter by civils, by every bit of data that is in the system, you can control and manipulate. And once that then gets allocated out, you can see there's 14 civils jobs out here at the minute. These will then be mapped onto the site diaries for the actual shift reports themselves. Now, I don't have my tablet with me today, but again, I'd be happy to do any follow-up sessions that anybody might want to have a look at. But the tablet version is just a much simpler version of this. Maps each of these activities as you can see here, the discipline, the week number, the planned quants. It maps it into the site report itself. So when the shift report, the shift manager's got the site diary, all he needs to do is tick each one of these off, provide some commentary about what happens. And then this happens for every shift, for every discipline across the entire alliance. Right now, all that data that I just showed you in the site is here. Right now, this is a dashboard that's up in JLH, which is the main office for Transpennine East. And again, we'll be building something very similar for the Nexus team. I'll show you another version of this as well. But ultimately, this is managing all the shift information and data that we have in the system, and it's pulling out, you know, what's been completed, what hasn't. You can see it's by individual discipline here. You can do it by individual program as well. But what this gives you is the data that sits beneath it. So where are the problems? You know, what hasn't been done here? So ultimately, by controlling information, getting robust inputs from site, you can immediately start to see where your problems are as things are happening. And this is now fully embedded. Again, it's something that this engine that we've taken has now been taken by other clients. And I'm going to show you an example in a second, where it's been taken by Alstom, and they can very different view of it. They wanted a kind of S curve of completions, but ultimately it's driven from the same data set. All it is a visual representation of what you want to see in order to track what the to make better decisions moving forward. The next site I wanted to show you is some engineering assurance sites. So this is one we've done with the Central Rail Systems Alliance. We're now working with them on the Transparent TRU as well. And this is our overhead line electrification. I've got your site on, Sean, as well, your UAT again, because again, it's what we're trying to show here is that we built an overhead line electrification assurance platform. Every stage of assurance is digitally controlled in our software. You know, again, I can see everything. That's why it looks really busy. But if I move into, just load it up, if I move into sort of foundations, you know, we're kind of moving into the way that they want to man. This is the way that CRSA have done it. Ultimately, what they're trying to get to is a fully assured overhead line electrification construction program. If I have a look at the work that we've been doing, if I find your site, sorry, so go. You guys have taken it very much from an asset type perspective, and I think this is a great way of doing it, right? And this is why what we do is different to other software providers. Is we don't tell you how to do OLE because we think we've got it all right. We work with you to understand how optimally you do it with your supply chain and your work. And as you can see here, that you know the data sets are different. There's a lot of information and data here, but ultimately, as it's going right back to the beginning, we control and manage data. It's boring as hell, but it's absolutely critical to managing and enabling cost savings when you're delivering these types of construction programs. The last couple of examples I wanted to show you some of the things that we've been doing around the output reports. So this is the again the Cambridge S-curve completion. This is the Alstom site where they have a reporting site. So we've been very fortunate that we've been working with Alstom for the last 5 years, and they've iteratively been supporting us how we help them manage signaling installation and hand over to test. And as you can see, these guys have really been thinking about how do they share this information with Network Rail? How do we, I'll just show you here, they've got all their projects across every single project is in every file, and they've created a digital standard for signaling and telecoms. So if you're fitting, there's a digital process that Alstom use for their entire supply chain. Doesn't matter if you're S&T cover or whoever, you will follow Alstom's process. They dictate what information, how you manage it, how you input it, because ultimately they're responsible for handing that back. This report here, as you can see, is a very high-level overview of individual projects. You can just pick the project for Alstom, and then it will literally cut through the data and give you a very high-level view by signaling asset type of where they are. Now, behind the scenes, of course, there is a huge amount of data. Let's click on the here. You've got absolute, I mean, again, by controlling the micro, the smallest amount of data allows you to get this kind of level of detail. So you can start to see there are significant amounts of installation. That's a really good report. There you go. Wi-Fi. There we go. So you can start to see here, look, if I refine this by project, go to Cambridge, instantly you can cut through the data. And this is available to, obviously I'm a super user at the minute. If I wanted to go down to Ferrybridge to Google, for example, instantly I can get that information, understand where I'm at. Now, these reports have been built specifically for Alstom, but ultimately, by creating some good data, ensuring the supply chain are being managed to input the data in the right way, the reporting that you get out of it can be phenomenal. And, you know, as we've done, and it's taken a number of iterations for us to work through this with Alstom to get it right, is, you know, the success that we've had with the blockade over Christmas has been phenomenal. So it's all about understanding and, you know, working through and iteratively improving what we deliver. The final piece of the puzzle that I'm going to cover off before I can show you some more, just a few other reports, is probably the elephant in the room around deployment of digital solutions is behaviour and culture. The biggest challenge we have, and I see as the industry has, is, you know, people can make decisions in offices around how deploying digital solutions. The change management of how that's embedded in supply chain is a massive challenge. You know, often these things are not embedded in the contract, so they're not contractually obligated to follow these processes. But we are starting to see that change. We are starting to see that the smaller tiers are engaging around using digital technology because they want to start winning more work. But ultimately, as a business, just to flick back to my presentation, a lot of what we do is supporting the deployments. So by digitally creating a piece of software and chucking it at a client and wishing them good luck does not work. And Sean's smirking because, you know, that we've had, you know, it's not always been perfect. We learn from our mistakes. It's about understanding how do we support clients with training, communication, you know, understanding, getting that feedback loop from the guys and girls out on track so that we can get their feedback. And it might be good ideas, might be crap ideas, but ultimately it's making them feel like that they're engaged and that we can make improvements to what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. Just to finish off, this idea of bringing together assurance, health and safety data, tracking, managing the processes on the ground, ultimately, what you're at the end of the project, that data has to go somewhere. And this is what I was referring to at the beginning. This is an example of a digital ecosystem that we're partially building for a client of ours. And we are seeing this a lot. A lot of our clients are now thinking about how do they create their own digital ecosystem to manage their own processes. Sometimes with every file, we're not professing to do everything. Well, you know, there are different health and safety systems with this client. They use safety culture, right? But ultimately, if we can get the data from safety culture, because they have open APIs to get information from these systems, we can bring the data into the data warehouse, which is this middle box here. Now, the data warehouse is Microsoft Azure, effectively. You know, it's a data lake. But because it's connected to our digital solutions, it enables us to bring the data together in an organized way. All those reports that I've just shown you are all driven from our data warehouse. But by managing each of the processes, this one is daily shift reporting. This one's the possessions that I showed you earlier, connected to the Power BI P6. This is your engineering assurance, OLE, signaling, civils, etc. Again, but not just standalone QCSs that engineers are filling out willy-nilly. It's connected to your design data. I know this steel needs to go on that asset with these design measurements, and it's allocated to that guy who's got the OLEC competency that needs to fulfill that requirement, and it's been allocated to him. That's the level of control that you have around assurance. But ultimately, obviously, the health and safety data is not with us, but this data comes into a central reporting environment, which enables the reports that I showed you. These top bits are the outputs. So on the left-hand side, we have automated email and PDF outputs, and this is generally for, we have capital delivery directors who, don't really want to be logging into dashboards. They just want an email knowing that things are on track. Well, we can output and do that, but it's using the data in the data warehouse. Similarly, you have your own systems, and again, we just put a smorgasbord of stuff in there. IFS Cloud, a site we interact with, we have an API. SAP we come across now and again, not so much in rail, but certainly in other sectors. Project-wise, obviously Synchro, Autodesk, Viewpoint, etc. But ultimately, because you've got your assurance data, because you've got what you need in every file or in our data warehouse, we use the data to create the documentation for handback. And that's the difference, because we see an awful lot of, big clients that have teams of people at the end of a project, and all they do is cobble together data or documents or Excel spreadsheets or bits of paper, and they cobble it together, and they do a fantastic job of it. It's incredibly time consuming, costly. But then once they've got that data then needs to be put in a different format for a different common CDE. And this is where some real inefficiencies happen. But if you've got good data, you can turn that data into any document you want. That's where we're seeing some real movement in the sector to trying to control things digitally up front to save a lot of money at the end. These last few things on the right here are just other data sources. We've started to see a lot of some of our clients look at One Big Circle. I know you guys probably know them. AIBR, really clever bit of tech. It's constantly collecting data from track. We can align that with the actual assurance of how something was constructed. So you could have a history of a picture of that asset, but also with all the information in every file about who constructed it, what it was made out of, on all the assurance. We're now looking at bringing plant data in, again, something that's generally used in other systems and not connected in with the main planning. And of course, site access control, people management software, some things like Macrail, Index, Signal. Again, we're not interested in where things work. Yeah, if you've got a system that works and manages your people, fantastic. But if you're asking somebody to log into a system, you shouldn't be asking them to log into a site diary as well, because you're inputting the same data twice. So just no point. Input it once, use the data to fulfill it over here as well. So just to kind of wrap up, we have seen, obviously, TRU is our flagship client. It's where we've been working along. We've got some impressive numbers around some of the things that we've been saving around streamlining planning, savings in reporting, the manual effort that's taken to cobble together reports, handback files, data, managing close calls. So we've seen some real success here. And again, this is just continuing to grow and grow and grow as more and more things continue.
Nice.
Yeah, it's the cobbling together of the data. It's that people put into WhatsApps, typing it in. Yeah. So that's around shift reporting. This is around the possession stuff, because again, the possession is real time. And that's where if you're half an hour late handing back on a possession, it's a costly business, right? So getting it right delivers the savings. And this is the challenge I have, is that there's a bell curve of effort up front. That's why we support you, as we're doing with you guys, Nexus at the minute, to help you with that transition. But once it's embedded, people start to work with it. It becomes a less of a battle. You're getting a good data from site. People start to get engaged with what you're trying to achieve and the dashboards, and it becomes a much easier sell to push on. That was the end of the presentation. I'd love to take any questions.
Thanks very much for that. Thank you, Dan.
Pleasure.
Questions from the floor?
One guy.
Big one.
It's the big one. Yeah, go for it, mate. Honestly, I'll have heard them before.
It's just obviously, I've just started new role, and we discussed it in my design insurance, since they've gone from the design insurance to engineering insurance.
Yes.
I them together, but I don't actually know what your question looks like. It's a lot of important about that.
Yeah, cool. It's a great question. Right, so let me show you what it looks like. Let me show you with, see where we built it.
Form PhD, engineering should get that. From a delivery should, how do you tie that in together?
Yeah, it's a good question. Right, look, so if I show you what we've been doing. So we originally built this for, again, it was for Allcom Transpennine, and it was OLE. How are they typing data? And it was originally done, shown here. There. So this data here, design. So this is the foundation allocation schedule. I can show you one for steel. It's exactly the same principle. But for that, you can see, for that, it's got the layout drawing, the wire run number, the asset number. So we know what the asset is. We know each of the components of each of the assets. There has been a massive output of the foundation allocation schedules generally in the spreadsheets. You've got a load of foundations to fit, and then you've got all the data of where these things and things, measurements, etc. So what we do is we work with you to understand how do you mesh your design data into your assets, right? And then we create it's called a data schema. And effectively, what we find is that most design houses, when they output design, it always comes out in the same format. The challenge is when you have different designers, because they come out in different formats. Once they come out in the same format, we can say, right, all that design information, not all of it is relevant to assurance, right? You might, and see here, they picked recost, final file level. You know, you can choose the elements of design that you want to assure, and that's the bit that we can connect to.
So
I didn't hear what he said, sorry, Sean.
We did actually demonstrate against design.
It's not against design. So all this data, if I can show you, yeah. So if something's out of tolerance, like you saw that, where did I put that?
QCS sheet.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find where to put it. I just yeah. So anything that's out of tolerance on here instantly can be reported back to the design team. So when we originally built this, it was Transpennine, East Volker, Sistra with the design team, and they were saying, look, we've got the steel design to do. If the foundation doesn't go where we said it's going to go, we need to alter the steel design, right? So this is what we do. This report is anything that the foundation was fitted. Sistra got a report that showed the difference in tolerance. It did highlight, because ultimately, sorry, I don't know your name. So anything we've got as data in the system just sits in that data warehouse, and you can say to me, James, I want to know when I log on to my Power BI dashboard, I want to know if a recost is more than 10 mil out, for example. And all that it will be doing as the data has been inputting, it's going against design. Power BI will do that check and it'll highlight it to you.
We had to keep quality check sheets, another one above it. When I come back,
Which one?
another one you had not up again, what you had to do.
that's one of the questions I used to always
Yeah, quality checklist.
Yeah, just go to that.
Yeah, I mean,
that one there. You should be identifying basically where you've actually taken plans.
Yeah.
So let's say the response will be pass or
Yeah.
fail or
One of the questions I always ask me last was like, how do I know what project is installed exactly what was meant to be there?
Yeah.
And I could never get that assurance.
Yeah.
Except for you, Sean.
Separate.
yeah. But if I, you know, I'll show you one of our flagship.
Also saying that he came to position before about project handover, project hand back. It was never people coming forward, so it was always hard to pick up where the project started from, where it is at the moment. So this kind of system, or so that there's files, has everything you need to see.
Yeah. Well, as I was trying to say, you know, when I was saying at the beginning about people are starting to think about that, because what we find is people get to that stage and think, oh Christ, we need to do something about it.
Yeah.
But you've already started construction, so you're already chasing your tail, and that's a challenge, because then you've got guys and girls out on the ground going, And we've got an iPad now, and then it's a challenge, right? So this push we're seeing for people to start going, well, we've got good quality design data, and how does that flow into construction? How do we check it's the right information that's going into the quality check sheets? You know, it's not overkill. You know, this is the Middle and Mainline site that we did with, you know, SPL Powerline, Simon Skinner, great advocate. What we did is a real success. Handed back and energized on time, you know, and those guys, this site has 7 million quality checks in it. That's what's handed back to project wise. Now, you know, Simon and I have been discussing it. They probably did too much in assurance. There was too many checks, because there's a balance between the challenge of the guys on the track and what you need. And this is why I was talking about the lowest common denominator. It's not really the right phrase, but it's what's the minimum information you need from guys out on the track to say, I'm confident it's been done as per design. And that can be data, it can be photos, video, it can be a combination of the three.
Just quick up, so as far as how do you deliver your confidence in the delivery? I don't know what you're reading. Legal process will actually use input that data, show you what you deliver.
Yeah.
Put that data on, say there you are.
Oh, you can put every bit of data out. So again, because everything's named, you know, I could just go into here and pick anything really. You can see that all the data. See, that's been issued by so that's example. There we go. So, you know, everybody signs anything off cross-section revision, the date, this audit trail. So, you know, if somebody has done something and it's passed on to somebody else, you will instantly know where the blockage is. You've done your bit. I've sent my bit. Like competencies, for example. Yeah, competencies. So again, site, because is it on this site? No, it's on a different one. So again, SPL, we do all like competencies with them.
Right.
So
I used to use do assessments. I used to use their site evidence.
Yeah.
See what you've done for activities.
100%. Yeah. So they have a really simple solution where they just kind of they download evidence that they're competent, and then that goes to a CRE. He then says yes, tick it off, and there's a report that comes as well.
Where's the conference? They could probably supply that to you.
Yes. Yeah. And you'll have a log of it. So if anything goes wrong, you can understand where the breakdown in scope.
And behind all this data on the dashboard, and I assume there is an electronic form to fill in somewhere on a tablet.
Yes.
Actually going back to the track thing, I see that, you know, your AG, the stresses certificates and stuff like that. So that's filled in.
We digitize any form. It's in Excel format, actually.
Right.
So basically, form A to G is really example.
Yeah.
It is. Say your relevant form A to G, you put it in. Electronic signature and back into the system.
Yeah.
If that's the benefit across the disciplines and learners.
Yeah.
Gives you the track was handed back up, saying it up.
Yeah.
But he's missing.
Yeah.
Glenn, it's a great point, right? So look, this is the back end of the system, right? This is the control panel. This is what makes us SaaS, software as a service, right? So you said to me, I need to create a new quality check sheet, James, and you gave me a piece of paper. I could probably teach you how to build it in 20 minutes, a digital form, right? But this is where, for CRSA, they centrally control their QCS suite. Again, what you often find is somebody takes a template from an Excel spreadsheet, and they move it onto another project, they change a few fields, and then somebody tries to report on it, and there's, oh, that doesn't match that, and you're out of kilter. What you're doing is centrally controlling your suite of quality check sheets. So if you're working for a CRSA, you're doing an EWQCS, that's the form you are filling out. And this is where we can change the configuration of the form today. Great to meet you. Thanks for coming and questions. And this is the power of the system. This is why, we don't tell people this is what you've got to do if you fill out an overline electrification assurance form. Everybody does it slightly differently. The good news is that obviously with the work we've done with John Spanner, we can share this work, and then generally it's an 80%, you customize the 20% to make it work for you.
Me personally, then I think they should adopt this project delivery.
Yeah.
Oh, so
No, I mean, I'm absolutely with you, but I'm just trying to get me head. So
is it worth drawing out one of the corporate checklists and one for
I'm
You want to look at yours?
wondering how it works, James. So with in terms of Nexus, then we have Nexus has lots of forms that we require filling in for a track renewal. I'm gonna be selfish and stick track renewal.
Yeah.
And that'll be the stand, Nexus style A to G's, Nexus style testing inspection plans.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nexus style temporary joint forms and all that sort of stuff. But we bring in subcontractors like welders.
Yep.
Right, and they'll fill a weld installation certificate.
Yep.
Now I'm wondering how that kind of works because would we have to get them to buy into using the heavy file tablet, if you like?
Yeah.
You know, so ERQ hopefully will eventually be our framework contract for the name. Basically, reporting to be able to be reporting on it.
And they'll put that in the contract, don't they?
Yeah, it's a great question, but it's one of the biggest challenges we have is that ability to influence the supply chain, right? Because often these big programs, they set the contracts out, and it's not defined how you deliver. Yeah, it's your risk now. Yeah, you deliver, all the risks on you. But yes, so there's your that's your shift report.
Yeah.
It's the back end.
That's what you use. So basically, you get a tablet, you download everything, and that's it.
Yeah.
Which becomes standard.
The way I say it's like more a formalized. So say had a blockade or install a West Ham seating, they would have like specific things that they would report on.
Yeah. Understood. Okay, thanks very much.
Right.
I'm conscious of time.
Yes.
I don't have any questions on the chat from those on Teams. So if there are no more questions from the floor, I'd like to invite Sean to give a vote of thanks before we close the meeting.
Yeah, just say thank you very much, Jim. Last minute,
My pleasure.
really helped out. As I say, it's a good system. I've got real life events because when I went to Volca, one of the major incident there, and the reason why I wanted a major incident because we've had no control.
Yeah.
But no evidence what was actually being done on site.
Yeah.
So by doing that, you give you the times, of course, I'm into a proper planning process.
Yeah.
More importantly, when I was dealing with Graham, I come to do my hand back that the evidence had been done. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate it.